I'm Scott Warner.
And I'm David Kirshner, and we're in our garden here in North Truro, Massachusetts.
On Cape Cod.
The original property that I've had for probably 25 years, and actually, didn't have much of a garden, but it did have a little garden, including the rose hedge that's right here that came with the house. But so I would say, I attempted to garden back then, but then Scott came into my life and was a real gardener, and so at that point I would say we ramped it up a little bit and started digging out garden bed after garden bed, buying the house next door, and then taking over the garden and expanding it there. So it's been kind of a long process, probably over 15 plus years.
15 to 18 years, I would say. I think the fact that we're basically sitting on a sand dune here on a bluff with exposed to like 50-mile-an-hour winds all winter long is a really big challenge. But we've amended the soil significantly. We do so every year with another round of compost and manure on top of things. So I would say the soil and the wind.
Ironically, that sand is actually wonderful in some ways because it keeps the garden well draining. We don't have a problem at all once, even when it's a deluge of rain, things go right through. So the plants aren't sitting in water. We don't have problems with rotting or anything like that. Down below, we actually have a rock wall, and on that rock wall, I've brought back over time, or we've gotten plants from California, because I live in California half time. And I would say rockrose or cistus is one that we are able to grow, and some of them have gotten to be 4 or 5 feet tall now. We do wrap them in the wintertime to protect them from the wind because they're an evergreen plant. So so that would be one that we absolutely grow, and I've picked up at Digging Dog in Mendocino, California, years ago, and actually we stay in touch with them and let them know kind of how they're doing in Zone 7A on Cape Cod.
I would say it's a rose that's no longer available in commerce in the United States as far as I know. It's called Cantabrigiensis. It's a sport of Father Hugo, which is a more familiar rose, and it's a beautiful pale yellow rose, and I love it very much.
Our roses have been really hard to source in some instances, so probably Isfahan might be my takeaway, and I think that was on one of our list of roses or whatever.
I think we're at pretty much full capacity here. I think we've gardened every available square inch that we can. So I think we're probably going to be in maintenance. And one thing I will say is maybe moving toward lower maintenance and planting more shrubs in areas that we're not here as much as we'd like to be, and are finding that might be a way to provide ongoing interest and cut down a little bit on the moving away from dahlias and more into shrubs.
I would agree with Scott that I think we've kind of now maxed out 2 properties in terms of the garden space or whatever. I mean, there are certainly areas of the garden that, we've worked really hard on a shade garden that we probably started, 6 years ago?
6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, we had to clear out a septic area and for a new septic, and once we did that, we had kind of new space, and we had because we're very exposed here, we had no shade, so it was kind of fun too. But that area, it looks gorgeous in the spring. It's all the ephemerals and whatnot, but it does, once the foxgloves and whatnot are done, it does kind of get a little boring. So I think looking to maybe add some things for late summer. I mean, one of the things we try to do is keep things literally year round, in bloom. The heaths in the wintertime, the beautiful pink ones that, are in the snow, look so beautiful. So, and we're very fortunate here because we're, despite the fact that we're in Massachusetts, we're really Zone 7A. So, our rosemary lives through the winter, usually, things like that. So because we're so, relatively temperate for Massachusetts, we can, keep things going all the way through the winter. I will say one other thing. I started probably maybe 5-6 years, maybe a little longer than that, doing witch hazel. And witch hazel actually blooms here starting sometimes at the end of January. Again, because we're temperate, we're sometimes 5 to 10 degrees warmer than Boston in the wintertime, and same opposite direction in the summertime. So we have collected numerous witch hazel. It's so wonderful in the wintertime when you have a beautiful clear sky, but it's cold, and you step out and you see those beautiful little yellow, tangles of flowers, and get a waft because the sun is warm. You get a waft of that smell, and it really lets you know that, spring isn't far away, maybe a couple of months or whatever, but it's so nice to see the color and have the fragrance. Even though the fragrance is very earthy. So in any event, in the understory down there, we've planted, many of them. We've gotten them from like Broken Arrow, places like that, and slam them in down there, and because they're a native, they do just fine.
And to amplify David's thought in terms of expanding, I think maybe winter flowering plants is something that I'm becoming increasingly interested in. We're expanding our hellebore collection, and we have early flowering corydalis, which blooms maybe in late March here. So I think, in order to prolong the season and give us hope, we're working on expanding our collection of things that bloom in the late winter. I'd say it's wild and woolly, a cottage-style garden. We try to emphasize plants that have a more natural aspect, that blend in with the Cape surroundings. We have, allowed the borders of the garden to nurture the wild, bayberry and Rosa virginiana that we have here, and we want that to sort of seamlessly blend with the garden itself.
Yeah, we kind of let it on the edges just do its thing, and there's some crossover reseeding into the. We have areas we refer to as the weed garden, things like that. So we try to keep the edges so it just kind of, bleeds right in very naturally. So your eye is not stopped by something that is like, oh, the garden ends. Right? So I get, as I say, the unfun tasks of carrying pots and, large Italian, very heavy things and whatnot. But, Scott really is the vision, I would say, of the garden.